Wobbuffet is one of many gimmick Pokemon in the franchise. In some situations, it's completely useless. Just ask anybody who's done a solo run with it. But in other situations, it's a nightmare. Just ask anybody who's run into it in a Nuzlocke. Today, I want to illustrate Wobbuffet's volatility in a different way. Let's take a look at its first 3 generations in competitive play, to see what this punching bag has to offer. Behold! Wobbuffet's Gen 2 Learn Set. Yeah, not exactly inspiring. I could probably deal more damage than the Scoofus Maloofus. The only way for Wobbuffet to deal damage is by counterattacking or using Destiny Bond to take its opponent down with it when it gets knocked out. One problem though is that Wobbuffet has 2 counterattacking moves, and it has to guess right to deal any damage. Counter deals double the damage Wobbuffet took from an attack, and so does Mirror Coat. The problem is Counter only works on physical moves, and Mirror Coat only works on special ones. Before the physical special split in Gen 4, the damage category of moves was dictated by their type, instead of being assigned on a move-to-move basis. That meant it was impossible to have a physical water move or special fighting move. So to round out your moveset, most Pokemon would be used as mixed attackers. They know a combination of physical and special moves to maximize damage. Mixed attackers aren't as common nowadays, because most types have decent moves in both categories. Physical fire types can use Flare Blitz or Fire Punch, and special fire types can choose between Flamethrower and Fire Blast. Oh, and also Overheat on alternate Thursdays. In Gen 2, a lot of Pokemon didn't have that luxury, which makes things harder for Wobbuffet. Since you can't reliably predict whether your opponent's going to use a physical or special move, you can't reliably guess whether to use Counter or Mirror Coat. If you guess wrong, the move fails and you do no damage. So with no reliable way of doing damage, it's entirely possible to just get burnt to a crisp, while your opponent still has full health. That being said, Wobbuffet has bigger problems on its hands. The best way to fight Wobbuffet is by not fighting it. Let's take a look at Wobbuffet's Learn Set again. Counter and Mirror Coat only deal damage if you're attacked first, Destiny Bond only deals damage if your opponent knocks you out at just the right time, and Safeguard just protects it from status conditions. So if you can get Wobbuffet to run out of Power Point, you can force it to struggle itself to death. And you can do that by just switching between 2 of your Pokemon ad nauseum. Wobbuffet literally can't do anything to you if you do that. It has no way of dealing damage for about 11 gazillion turns. And its attack stat is horrible, so struggle won't save it either. Switching repeatedly till it runs out of power points completely shuts Wobbuffet down. So if Wobbuffet is the last Pokemon on your opponent's team and you have 2 of your own left, you win! Take your victory lap, you've earned it. Wobbuffet was completely unusable in Generation 2, but Gen 3 introduced abilities to the series. For many Pokemon, getting a new passive attribute is a nice bonus. For some Pokemon, their ability was a huge buff, but Wobbuffet would still be completely useless to this day if it didn't get such an incredible ability. In Gen 2, switching rendered Wobbuffet useless. But Shadow Tag prevents switching entirely. It traps your opponent. Counter and Mirror Coat deal double the damage Wobbuffet took, so it can score one-shots with these moves. Its HP stat is absolutely massive, so it can take one heck of a beating and still do big damage. And its opponent is going to have to attack it eventually, because it can't switch out into a better matchup. So there are a lot of cases where you're minding your own business, then Wobbuffet switches in and you die. Wobbuffet was actually banned from standard play in Gen 3, and it was sent to the Ubers tier with many of the legendaries. Heck, even its pre-evolution Wynaut was banned to Ubers. Getting banned is nothing to sneeze at, even if you got banned for cheese like this. Wobbuffet isn't exactly good in the Uber tier itself, but hey. In this generation, 2 Shadow Tag Pokemon can trap each other. So if player 1 knocks out, I don't know, a Mewtwo with Wobbuffet's Mirror Coat, player 2 can bring in their own Wobbuffet. Since both Pokemon have Shadow Tag, neither of them can switch out, and they also can't attack each other till they waste all of their power points. After about 50 turns, they can finally start struggling each other into oblivion, and one of them can eventually limp their way to a victory. Fellas, I haven't been entirely truthful with you. That's what a one-on-one fight between 2 Wobbuffet would look like nowadays in Ubers, but one other thing has been banned for triggering an infinite battle. The held item Leftovers heals 1/16 of your max health at the end of each turn, rounded down. Since Wobbuffet has such a low attack stat, Leftovers will heal more damage than Struggle can deal, even when you take the recoil damage into account. That means 2 Shadow Tag Wobbuffet will never knock each other out, so the battle will never end. So the rules of Gen 3 Ubers had to be modified, and a clause was added stating that Wobbuffet and Wynaut are banned from holding Leftovers. And that brings us to the last stop in this ridiculous journey, Generation 4. Shadow Tag was slightly nerfed in Diamond and Pearl. Now 2 Shadow Tag Pokemon can't trap each other, so as long as the 2 Wobbuffet aren't the last Pokemon left conscious, an infinite battle won't be triggered. But to avoid infinite battles entirely, Struggle had to be tweaked as well. In Generation 3, it dealt pretty negligible recoil damage. Wobbuffet only took 1/4 of the damage it dealt with Struggle, which means just 4 to 5 health and recoil per turn. That's just not putting a dent in this health bar, man. In every game since Gen 4, Struggle's recoil damage is equal to 1/4 of the user's total health. Wobbuffet typically had 522 HP, so it would deal a maximum of 20 damage to another Wobbuffet, then take 130 damage in recoil. So once Wobbuffet ran out of power points, the battle would be over pretty quickly. So the Wobbuffet nonsense was fixed in Gen 4, and we never had to deal with infinite battles ever again. The end. Welp, gotta go. Good night, fellas. Sleep well.